Okay, so this is wild. Check out this graph. Since 2008, US home prices have nearly doubled. And just in the last 5 years alone, they've shot up over 47%. That sounds like things are getting really expensive. And they are. But here's the twist. That number, the price, the amount that people buy and sell homes for, the agreed upon value between a buyer and a seller, even though it is generally accepted as the cost of a home, it's actually misleading and very confusing. Because every time the government tries to help, cutting rates, tax credits, subsidies, they often end up just fueling the fire. So the housing bubble keeps expanding, but it doesn't pop. Instead, it morphs. And underlying all of this is a more important metric that almost nobody talks about. I'm going to show you exactly what matters when it comes to the actual values of homes and why a bubble can keep on growing without ever popping. And I'm going to give you a guide to thrive, regardless of what happens in the market. So let's rewind for a second. The US housing market has been on a 2-decade roller coaster. Well, actually, it's been on almost a 50-year roller coaster, maybe even 100 years. It booms and then it busts, and then it booms and it booms and it booms when everyone expects that another bust is just around the corner. And every single time, without fail, when it falters, policymakers react.
Decision on interest rates, and economists are banking on another cut.
The Federal Reserve has cut interest rates.
They cut interest rates, they inject cash, and they hand out subsidies. It's like handing out Black Friday coupons, only to see stores jack up the prices because they know everyone's lining up. That's what demand-side fixes do. They help buyers initially, but sellers just raise their prices. So a government policy that's designed to make houses more affordable actually more often than not does the opposite. It makes them significantly more expensive. And this, of course, creates a transfer of wealth from those who are buying homes to those who have already owned them through all the booms and the busts. So let's start by unpacking what each of these policies actually does to the market beneath the surface. Start with interest rates. These are the Trojan horse. In 2020, the Fed pushed mortgage rates below 3%. This was almost free money. This supercharged borrowing power, letting buyers keep monthly payments steady even as they paid more and more and more. It's like trying to put out a fire by pouring gasoline on it. Sure, ever more expensive houses, they start to seem within reach because the monthly payments don't change. But the overall cost of borrowing, and that combined with the purchase price of the houses, it's going up. And not only is it going up, it's going up exponentially. In fact, it's almost exactly the same as what's happened in the car market. Dealerships no longer focus on the price of the vehicle, they focus on the payment. They're trying to sell you the cost of the car on a monthly or weekly basis. And they've done this by doing things like buying down interest rates and extending out terms. And while you feel like you're still paying the same amount for a car, you're actually paying way, way, way more for it. And even though there isn't a car dealership that is raising the prices of houses, the government's almost acting like that shady car dealer, making people feel like they can afford more home when they actually can't. In fact, it's getting worse and worse all the time. With more buyers chasing the same supply, prices exploded. Yet payments look tame in the moment. They seem like they're manageable. Then there's the supply squeeze. Builders couldn't keep up after 2008. And they still haven't caught up. Meanwhile, existing homeowners, they refinanced into ultra-low rates and chose not to move. That's what we call the Lockin Effect. But before we get into that, let me tell you about our sponsor for this video, Incogn. You'd probably be surprised how many people have their identities and personal information stolen. I've run a financial company for the last 22 years, and we run across hundreds of people who have found themselves in this situation annually. What happens is data brokers gather personal information about people and sell it for profit. Unfortunately, this same personal data can also end up in the hands of scammers and fraudsters, and more often than not, it does. Not only that, these same data brokers are often responsible for the annoying calls and emails you receive all the time, trying to sell you stuff and in some cases to even steal more of your information. Incogn reaches out to these data brokers on your behalf. They request that they remove any of your personal data, and they handle any of the objections. The process to get started is simple. It literally took me less than 5 minutes. That was 5 minutes invested for complete peace of mind when it comes to my personal data. Then all you do is kick back and let them do all the work. So if you want to take your personal data back with Incogn, go to incogn.com/Nolan or use the code Nolan at checkout and get 60% off the annual plan. It will be the best investment you make this year. Meanwhile, existing homeowners, they refinanced into ultra low rates and chose not to move. That's what we call the Lockin Effect. And it pulls supply off the market, squeezing availability and fueling even higher prices. Because those people who already own homes at really low interest rates that got in before all of the subsidies and everything else, well, they don't want to move because they're already winning. Then came subsidies and tax credits like the $8,000 first-time homebuyer credit. But prices jumped about $2,400. Nearly 1/3 of that benefit disappeared into the seller's pockets. It didn't go to benefit the buyers it was intended to help. It was like the Black Friday coupon effect, where the discounts looked great, but the prices had already been adjusted up, with the market knowing that the sale was coming and that people would buy because they thought that they were getting a deal. Then finally, we have the mortgage interest rate deduction, a popular tax break that lowers borrowing costs for homeowners with large mortgages. But data shows it doesn't increase home ownership. It just inflates home values. But here's the twist. This is the pivot point. Housing affordability isn't about the sticker price. It's about what actually hits your account every month. Think of it like making the minimum payment on a credit card. You see a $500 purchase, but ignore the interest. And at 22 or 23% over time, you end up paying $900 for that thing that you thought you were paying $500 for. And when it comes to buying a house, this is exactly the same. With 30-year mortgages, you're almost always paying double the actual price that you thought you paid. So even though the monthly payment feels the same and the monthly cost feels the same, as all of these subsidies and everything else prop up the real estate market and increase prices, it's not only a higher price that you're paying for the house, but the cost of the mortgage and everything else goes up exponentially. And this is where this thing called TDS, or the total debt service payment, makes the whole thing really confusing. This is the percentage of disposable income that you have that goes to paying your debt. In Q4 of 2007, TDS hit 15.85% for all homes across the US. Now keep in mind that anybody who bought over the last 50 years probably had a really small mortgage, and this averages everything out way lower than what it is for a first-time homebuyer. But this number was 44% above the long-term average of 11%. And this gets worse when you consider that first-time homebuyers and people who are buying a home or upgrading a home during the last 5 years, well, typically somewhere between 30 and 45% of their income are going towards their mortgage payments. So these are the exact same people that have paid a significantly higher price for the house that have the largest proportion of their income going to their mortgage payments. But by Q4 of 2024, total debt servicing had fallen to 11.28%. And this is above average, but far from the crisis that we saw in 2008. And that's why the market hasn't collapsed yet, and likely won't. It's just frozen. But remember that 11.28% includes everyone, even retirees who paid off their mortgage decades ago. But new buyers tell a different story. The top 10% are spending 41% of their income just on housing costs. Now, we don't have perfect data for this, but back in 2008, many borrowers had pushed their debt servicing ratio to 45 or 50%. And this was often due to what's called ninja loans. No income, no jobs, no assets. It basically made it so that anybody could get any mortgage of any size that they wanted. It was risky lending, to say the least. So while underwriting is tighter today, many new buyers are walking a financial tightrope. The iceberg isn't home prices. It's the payment shock lurking just below the surface. So let's be clear. Home prices aren't really the price of a home. They're a reflection of buying power, how much people can afford based on their income and borrowing costs. The real cost of owning a home is what you pay over time, both in the purchase price and in the interest. And when interest rates fall and prices rise, these often balance out. So even if a home looks more expensive, the total cost might not be, but it could also be exponentially higher. And here's something we rarely talk about: The real barrier to entry isn't the price or the payment. It's actually the down payment. Higher home prices mean higher upfront costs, but many first-time homebuyers are overcoming this with gifts from parents or existing homeowners who are using the equity that they have gained as a result of all of these policies. And sometimes this comes from existing homeowners refinancing and giving money to their kids. Sometimes it comes from people who have already been in the market, who have substantial equity and use that to buy a new home. But the truth is, the people who are looking to enter the market for the first time, they're the ones who suffer. So while the price tag looks like the real issue here, it's not. The true gatekeeper is how quickly you can gather that upfront chunk of cash. So what can you do in this market, especially if you're looking at just entering it for the first time? Well, the first is you need to focus on the monthly payment, not the price. And specifically what you need to ask is, can I survive this payment if my income drops? A good way to do this is by following the 30-30 rule. If you keep housing costs below 30% of your income and maintain a 30-month savings buffer, this will make it so that you can weather a lot of storms. But on top of that, you need to make sure that if you own a home or you're buying a home, you eliminate all high interest debt. Credit cards, car loans, these steal your payment capacity and they put you at risk if the market turns or if you lose a job. And when you're looking at the cost of homes, don't just take a look at the price and go, that seems unaffordable. Do the math. Go back 5-7 years. Take a look at housing prices and interest rates. Figure out what the total cost would be over 30 years, and then compare that today. Because there's a good chance that you're probably paying about the same price. It's just a matter of whether or not it's going to the bank or to the person selling you the home. And don't bet on things like marry the house and date the rate. The idea that you can always lower the interest rate down the road, because this may not be the sort of strategy that you want to implement, because there is a good chance that interest rates may not go down. You need to make sure that when you buy today, this is your worst case scenario and that you base your decisions on that. And it needs to be sustainable. You also need to prioritize financial stability. This is the most important thing when buying a home. A modest fixed rate mortgage beats overreaching every single time. Don't fall for the adjustable rate mortgage traps that are so common in the US. And if you're watching from Canada, it's a totally different thing. Every 5-year fixed mortgage is a 5-year adjustable rate mortgage. That's just the nature of our market. But make sure that you can do everything that you can in order to protect yourself in the future from rising interest rates, job loss, and anything that could be catastrophic. Because here's the reality. You don't have to predict the market. You don't have to time the market. In fact, you probably won't be able to. Most people can't. You just need to outlast it when things get bad. So instead of looking at housing prices and go, that seems way too expensive, or buying a house based solely on the price, plan for the total ownership cost, what it's going to cost you over 30 years. Don't just compare prices, run the numbers on total interest, taxes, insurance, and maintenance. Buying a home is like buying a car with a 30-year gas bill. You need to know what it really costs to drive it. And on top of that, beware of the forever home fantasy. In uncertain markets, flexibility beats perfection. While you might think that you want to buy a more expensive home that is absolutely perfect, that you can live in forever, if you are overreaching financially, what good is that home if at some point forever turns into, I need to sell because I'm about to go bankrupt? So when you're buying a home, choose the bare minimum of what you need, what will work right now. Not your dream layout for 40-45. You can always upgrade later. And when you do, make sure you put the same protections into place, knowing that you can afford it for the long term. But keep in mind that stretching for today, for someday, can and will likely backfire. And make sure that you inflation-proof your purchase. Make sure you have that fixed rate mortgage that locks in your housing costs, even as everything else is rising. One of the unique benefits of buying a home in the US is that you can, in fact, lock in your pricing for the next 30 years. And in that sense, if you do that, owning a home can actually be a hedge against inflation if you buy responsibly and buy something that you can maintain for the long term. And most importantly, don't let the fear of missing out guide you. FOMO makes bad deals look acceptable. Markets, at the end of the day, don't reward panic buyers. They reward prepared buyers. Think in decades. Real estate isn't about getting rich next year. It's about building stability over 10, 20, even 30 years. If you get the basics right, you have manageable payments, low debt, stable income, you'll be fine even if prices wobble. So don't obsess whether we're in a bubble. The right time to buy a house is when you need the right house. Focus on your own numbers and whether or not you'll be able to sleep at night knowing that you're going to have that payment for a long period of time. Because ultimately, real estate is personal, not political, not emotional, not speculative. Oh, and if you want to know more about what always happens before a real estate market crash, so you can see the signs ahead of time, make sure you watch this video right here.